I met Sophie in early January. It started the way most things do now, through Instagram. I had replied to one of her stories, something about a horror movie she'd posted, and we hit it off immediately. She was funny, sarcastic in a way that wasn't annoying, and had the kind of effortless charm that made you want to keep talking to her. We moved to texting within a few days, then late-night FaceTime calls. She lived about 40 minutes away, but neither of us seemed to care about the distance. By the time February rolled around, we had been on a few dates. Sophie was the first person in a long time that I actually wanted to spend Valentine's Day with. But the closer we got to the holiday, the weirder she became. It started with a gift, a red box, left outside my front door. At first, I thought it was from Sophie, until I opened it. Inside was a single black and white photograph. A picture of me, sleeping. My stomach turned. I had no idea when or how it had been taken. My bedroom window had blinds. My door was always locked, and I lived alone. There was no note, no explanation, just the photo. I called Sophie immediately. "Hey," she said, her voice warm. "What's up?" I swallowed hard. "Did you leave something at my door?" She hesitated. "No, why?" I looked down at the picture in my hands. A shiver ran through me. "It's nothing," I said quickly. "Forget I asked." But I couldn't forget. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, things got worse. I started noticing small changes in my apartment. Objects moved slightly out of place. My fridge door open when I knew I had closed it. The TV on when I woke up in the middle of the night. I tried to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, that maybe I had left the TV on, or that I had knocked something over without realizing it. Then, the text started. "Unknown number, I love watching you." I stared at the message, my chest tightening. I texted back, "Who is this?" "Unknown number, you'll know soon." I blocked the number, but something told me they weren't going to stop. I didn't tell Sophie about any of it. I should have, but she had been acting strange too. She stopped replying to texts as fast. When we talked on the phone, she seemed distracted, like her mind was somewhere else. Then, the night before Valentine's Day, she called me out of nowhere. Her voice was shaking. "Do you ever feel like you're being watched?" I sat up in bed, my stomach twisting into knots. "Why are you asking that?" She hesitated. "Because someone's watching me." I got to her apartment in less than 30 minutes. She was terrified. Sophie wasn't the kind of person to scare easily, but she was visibly shaking when she let me inside. She told me someone had been calling her from a blocked number all night. Every time she answered, there was nothing but breathing on the other end. And then, just before I arrived, someone had knocked on her door. Soft, slow. When she looked through the peephole, no one was there. She was too scared to call the cops. But she wasn't scared to call me. That should have made me feel good. But instead, it just made me wonder, why hadn't I told her that I was getting the same calls? I stayed the night at Sophie's apartment. Nothing happened, but neither of us slept. Every time there was the smallest sound, pipes creaking, wind against the window, she tensed. I kept my eyes on the door, and at exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. A new text from unknown number. "See you both soon." I didn't tell Sophie. The next morning, I convinced myself that it was just some sick prank. Maybe an ex of hers messing with her. Maybe one of my old friends trying to freak me out. I told her I'd still take her out for Valentine's Day. We both needed the distraction. She agreed. She didn't know I was already planning to bring a knife. That night, we went to a small Italian restaurant. Everything felt normal again. We ordered wine, talked about stupid things, made fun of the couples that were way too into it. For the first time in days, I wasn't thinking about the messages. Then Sophie's eyes locked onto something behind me. Her face went pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. I turned around. A man was sitting on the far side of the restaurant, alone, staring at us. He didn't look away when our eyes met. He just smiled. A slow, knowing smile. And in front of him on the table was a small red box. Sophie grabbed my wrist. "We need to leave." I threw a 20 on the table and followed her outside. "Who was that?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just kept walking toward my car. I felt eyes on me. I turned my head. The man was still sitting at the table, still smiling. But now, his head was tilted to the side, watching, waiting. We drove in silence. I could tell Sophie was shaken. "Do you know him?" I finally asked. She hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, "I think I've seen him before." My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "Where?" She swallowed hard. "Outside my apartment." I felt my stomach drop. I pressed the gas harder, eager to get us home. The roads were empty, stretching out into the night. And then, the headlights appeared behind us. Bright, blinding, following. Sophie noticed them too. "Is that?" The car behind us sped up. So did I. But no matter how fast I went, they kept up. And then, in an instant, the headlights disappeared. Gone. Like they had never been there at all. I checked my mirrors, my pulse hammering. The road behind us was completely empty. My phone buzzed. I picked it up with shaking hands. A new text. Unknown number. "Happy Valentine's Day." And attached, a photo of Sophie and me, taken from outside the restaurant. Before we even noticed him, Sophie stared at my phone, her face frozen in horror. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking it. It was us, sitting inside the restaurant, talking, laughing. I looked at the timestamp, 8:43 p.m. That was 10 minutes before we ever noticed the man watching us. My hands clenched around the phone. He was watching us the whole time. Sophie shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "I don't understand. Who is he? Why is he following me?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we needed to get the hell out of here. I hit the gas, gripping the wheel tight. The roads were nearly empty, the city lights fading as we drove towards Sophie's apartment. Every few seconds, I checked the rearview mirror. The car from before was gone, but the feeling of being watched hadn't left. And somehow, I knew, this wasn't over. By the time we reached Sophie's apartment, it was nearly midnight. I parked on the street, scanning the area before unlocking the doors. Everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal. Sophie hesitated before getting out. "I don't think I should stay here." "You can come back to my place," I said quickly. "We'll figure out what to do in the morning." She nodded. "Let me just grab some stuff." I followed her inside, my muscles tense. The apartment was dark, quiet, the kind of silence that didn't feel right. She locked the door behind us. "5 minutes," she whispered. "Then we leave." I nodded. We had no idea how much time we actually had. Sophie disappeared into her bedroom to pack a bag. I stayed in the living room, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Then, from the corner of my eye, something moved. I spun around. The front door was unlocked. I knew Sophie had locked it. I had heard the bolt slide into place. But now, it was open by an inch. The air went still. I took a slow step forward, my pulse hammering in my ears. My fingers reached for the door. A shadow passed by the peephole. I jerked back, every hair on my body standing on end. Someone was outside, and they weren't knocking. I turned on my heel, sprinting towards Sophie's bedroom. "We need to go." I stopped in the doorway. She was standing perfectly still in front of her open closet. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. "Sophie?" I whispered. She didn't look at me. Her wide, glassy eyes were locked on something inside the closet. I followed her gaze, and my blood turned to ice. On the closet floor was a small red box, wrapped in shiny paper, identical to the one I had found outside my door. Except this one was open, and inside, lying neatly against the velvet lining, was a knife. Dried blood coated the blade, and beside it was a Polaroid photo, a picture of me and Sophie, taken from inside this apartment. I grabbed Sophie's wrist. "We're leaving. Now." She didn't argue. We ran. Didn't stop to turn off the lights. Didn't bother locking the door. We just ran. Out of the apartment. Down the stairs. Into the freezing night air. I fumbled for my keys, practically throwing myself into the driver's seat. The second Sophie got in, I floored it. Neither of us looked back. We didn't stop until we reached my apartment. I locked the door behind us, double-checking the windows, the deadbolt, every possible way someone could get in. Sophie sat on the couch, her hands shaking. "What the hell is happening?" she whispered. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my texts, heart racing, hoping, praying that there was some clue, some hint of who was doing this. And then I noticed something. A new text. Unknown number. You took her away from me. My mouth went dry. I stared at the message, my vision blurring at the edges. Another text came through. Unknown number. You shouldn't have left the door open. A chill ran down my spine. I turned, my breath catching in my throat. The apartment door was unlocked. Again. I locked the door. Again. Then I turned to Sophie. We can't stay here. She nodded, her face pale. Where do we go? I had no idea, but before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. I looked down. A new photo. My stomach dropped. It was taken inside my apartment, from behind the couch, where Sophie was sitting. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm. Get up. Her eyes widened. What? I didn't have time to explain. I yanked her up just as the lights cut out. The room was plunged into pitch black, and in the darkness, we weren't alone. Something moved. A whisper crawled through the silence. Sophie let out a choked sob, her grip on my arm painfully tight. I fumbled in my pocket, my fingers brushing against my keys. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway, getting closer. I gritted my teeth and moved. Pulling Sophie with me, I sprinted toward the front door. A sharp, metallic scrape rang out behind us, like a knife being dragged across the wall. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I threw open the door, and we ran. We made it to my car. I started the engine with shaking hands, my breath ragged. Sophie was crying softly beside me, her body curled in on itself. I didn't say anything. I just drove. Drove until the city lights disappeared, until the road stretched into empty, endless highways. Neither of us spoke, because we both knew, no matter how far we went, it wasn't over. It's been 6 months. Sophie and I don't talk anymore. After that night, she moved, changed her number. I don't blame her, but I know she still gets them, because so do I. Every Valentine's Day, a new red box appears on my doorstep. No return address, no sender, just a box. And inside, the same thing. A photo of me, taken while I was sleeping, and a note. The same 3 words. See you soon. Valentine's Day has always been my least favorite holiday. The forced romance, the overpriced chocolates, the way every couple in the world suddenly decides to shove their happiness in your face. It's exhausting. But last year, something happened that made me hate it for a completely different reason. Because last year, I got a Valentine from someone I had never met. And whoever they were, they never wanted me to leave. It started with a letter. I came home from work on February 13th, exhausted from dealing with customers all day, and found a red envelope sitting in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was from my ex, Kayla. We had broken up a few months earlier, and even though I was the one who ended things, she wasn't exactly handling it well. But when I flipped it over, there was no return address. Just my name, in perfect, looping handwriting. I opened it on my way up to my apartment, expecting some cheesy Hallmark message inside. Instead, I found a handwritten note. Tomorrow is our day. I can't wait. That was it. No name, no signature, just those words. I frowned, checking the envelope again, but there was nothing else inside. By the time I reached my door, I had convinced myself it was a joke, some kind of prank. I tossed the letter on the counter and forgot about it. I should have thrown it away, because that was just the beginning. The next morning, Valentine's Day, another envelope appeared. This time, it wasn't in my mailbox. It was taped to my apartment door. I stared at it for a long moment before peeling it off. My hands shook as I opened it, my stomach twisting into knots. Inside was another note. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're ready. I stepped back, scanning the hallway. Nothing. No signs of anyone. No footprints. The air was still, heavy, like whoever had left the letter was still close by, watching. I locked the door behind me, my pulse hammering. This wasn't funny anymore. I sat on the couch, staring at the letter, trying to piece together who could have sent it. Kayla? A co-worker messing with me? Before I could overthink it, my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. Did you like my letter? A cold shiver crawled up my spine. I didn't respond. Instead, I typed out a quick message to my best friend, David. Dude, I think someone is messing with me. David, what do you mean? Someone left a letter on my door. And now they're texting me. David, that's creepy as hell. Who is it? I don't know. They won't say. David, block the number. If they keep messing with you, call the cops. I didn't need to be told twice. I blocked the number. Then, I grabbed the letters, shoved them in a drawer, and did my best to forget about them. For a few hours, I actually thought it was over. I was wrong. That night, I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought I imagined it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. I blinked, still half asleep. My room bathed in pale moonlight. Then the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. I turned my head toward the noise. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was knocking on my bedroom window. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, no way for anyone to be out there. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. For a moment, I thought about checking, pulling back the curtain, seeing who or what was on the other side. But something in my gut told me not to. Then, my phone buzzed. A single new text. From the same unknown number I had blocked. I can see you. I couldn't breathe. The knocking continued. Louder. More frantic. Tap, tap, tap. Then, silence. I waited, my pulse hammering. The only sound in the room was my own uneven breathing. Minutes passed. Nothing. After what felt like an eternity, I finally forced myself to move. I reached for my phone with trembling hands, barely able to grip it. Another text came through. I didn't want to look, but I did. And this one had a photo of me, taken from outside my bedroom window. I didn't sleep. I didn't even move until the sun came up. By morning, I had convinced myself it was all some elaborate prank, that someone had edited that photo, that there was a rational explanation for everything. I wanted to believe that, but deep down, I knew. Someone had been inside my apartment, watching, waiting, and they weren't done. At exactly 12 p.m., a knock came at my door. I nearly jumped out of my skin. For a second, I thought it was them. But when I checked the peephole, it was just a delivery guy. I let out a shaky breath and opened the door. "Package for you," he said, handing me a small, red-wrapped box. I stared at it. I hadn't ordered anything. "There's no return address," the guy said. "Just your name." I took the box, my stomach twisting. As soon as I shut the door, my phone buzzed. Another text. "Unknown number, open it." My hand shook as I unwrapped the box. Inside was a single red velvet ring box, like the kind you'd propose with. I swallowed hard, my breath uneven. I opened it. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a human tooth. I dropped the box. My phone buzzed again. Another text. "Unknown number. I gave you a part of me. Now it's your turn." I blocked the number again. This time, I called the cops. They didn't take me seriously. "We can file a report," the officer said, his tone uninterested. "But unless a crime has been committed, there's not much we can do." I hung up. I was on my own. And somehow, I knew. It was only going to get worse. That night, as I sat in my apartment, trying to figure out what to do, my phone buzzed one last time. I stared at the screen, dread curling in my stomach. A new photo. This one wasn't of me. It was of my front door, taken from inside the apartment, from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The photo on my phone showed my front door, from inside my apartment. That meant whoever sent it was here, with me. I sat frozen, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to get up, throw open the door, and sprint as far as I could. But something told me that if I moved, if I even breathed too loudly, I'd regret it. Then my phone buzzed again. A new text. "Unknown number. I love being this close to you." My stomach dropped. Slowly, painfully, I forced my head to turn just slightly, just enough to see the reflection of the room in the dark TV screen. And that's when I saw it. A figure, standing in the kitchen, watching me. I reacted purely on instinct. I bolted. not toward the door. Whoever was in my apartment was between me and the exit. Instead, I ran into my bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. I shoved my dresser against it, my hands shaking so badly that I almost lost my grip. My lungs felt like they were on fire, my body screaming in panic. Think, think, think. I reached for my phone. I dialed 911. The call didn't go through. No service. No Wi-Fi. Just a black screen and the words, "Call failed." Then, tap, tap, tap. Knuckles against the bedroom door. I bit down on my lip, squeezing my eyes shut. Then, a voice. Soft. Loving. "Why are you hiding from me?" I didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then, the voice spoke again. "You don't need to be scared." The doorknob rattled. My pulse spiked. Then, the sound of paper sliding under the door. I stared at the small, folded note now sitting at my feet. My body refused to move. I didn't want to pick it up, but I did. With shaking fingers, I unfolded the paper. There were only 4 words. "You are already mine." I shoved the paper away like it had burned me. My entire body felt wrong, like I had been dipped in ice water. The knocking stopped. For a long, excruciating moment, there was nothing. Then, footsteps, moving away from the door. Slow, deliberate. The front door of my apartment creaked open. Then it clicked shut. I stayed in my bedroom for what felt like hours, listening, waiting. When I finally worked up the courage to move the dresser and check the apartment, no one was there, but something else was. Sitting neatly in the center of my coffee table, another red box, and next to it, a knife. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on my couch, staring at the box, too afraid to touch it. Every single part of me screamed to leave, to run, to never come back. But something kept me frozen, paralyzed. Like I had already lost the ability to make my own choices. Like I had already been claimed. The next morning, I packed a bag. I was done. I wasn't staying in that apartment another second. I booked a hotel, texted my boss that I was taking some time off, and tried to convince myself that I could outrun this, that I could escape. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't over, because as I threw my bag over my shoulder and opened the front door, I saw a single envelope taped to it, and inside, written in that same delicate, obsessive handwriting, "No matter where you go, I will follow." It's been a year. I don't live in that apartment anymore. I moved across the country, changed my number, wiped my social media. For a while, I thought I was safe. That whoever, or whatever, had fixated on me had finally given up. Then, last week, a package arrived at my new apartment. No return address, no sender, just a red box. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, a picture of me, sleeping, taken from inside my bedroom, and written on the back, in perfect, looping handwriting, "Happy Valentine's Day, my love. I told you I'd find you." I never told anyone what happened last Valentine's Day. Not because I don't remember. I remember everything. I remember the text. I remember the flowers. And I remember the man standing in my backyard, watching me through the window. But if I told people, they'd never believe me. Because according to everyone else, he was never there. It started on February 10th. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can't wait to see you again soon." I stared at the message, confused. I hadn't been on a date in months. At first, I thought it was a wrong number. Some poor guy accidentally texting an ex. I didn't respond. But a few minutes later, another text came through. "I still think about that night. About the way you looked in red." I felt a cold chill, because I did own a red dress. And I had worn it once, months ago, to a friend's engagement party. I checked the number again. Nothing. No name. Just those words. And somehow, they felt meant for me. The next morning, I woke up to find flowers on my doorstep. A dozen red roses, tied with a black ribbon. I bent down, my fingers trembling as I plucked the small card from the bouquet. It wasn't signed, but it had a message. "I hope you liked my gift. Can't wait for Valentine's Day." I felt my stomach drop, because whoever sent them knew where I lived. I spent the rest of the day on edge. I triple-checked that my doors were locked, kept glancing over my shoulder whenever I was outside. By evening, I was starting to convince myself that it was nothing, just some mix-up. Then my phone buzzed again. A new text. Why do you lock the door when you're home alone? My blood ran cold. I didn't reply. I didn't move. I just sat there, phone clutched in my hands, listening. The house was silent, but suddenly, I didn't feel alone anymore. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me flinch. The creak of the old pipes, the distant hum of passing cars. Everything felt wrong. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., I heard it. A soft tap against my bedroom window. I froze. The sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to be my imagination. But then, my phone buzzed. I turned over, heart hammering. A new message. Unknown number. Are you awake? I didn't check the window. I couldn't. I just lay there, frozen, waiting for the tapping to stop. Eventually, it did. And when I woke up the next morning, everything seemed normal. No strange messages. No signs of anyone outside. For a moment, I thought maybe I had dreamt it, until I walked into my kitchen and found another bouquet of roses sitting on my counter, with the back door wide open. I left the house that morning and didn't come back until after dark. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I had left the door open by accident. But deep down, I knew the truth. Someone had been inside, and they had been watching me while I slept. February 14th came faster than I wanted it to. By then, I was barely sleeping, barely eating. I had considered calling the police, but what would I tell them? Someone sent me flowers and weird texts? They'd laugh me off the phone. So instead, I did the only thing I could. I stayed inside, locked the doors, closed the curtains, and waited for Valentine's Day to be over. I almost made it, until 9 p.m., when my phone rang. Unknown caller. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. I knew I shouldn't answer, but my hands moved on their own. I pressed accept, brought the phone to my ear, and immediately, I regretted it, because on the other end of the line, I heard someone breathing, slow, heavy, like they were standing right next to me. Then, a whisper, soft, loving, "Come outside." I hung up and backed away from the phone like it was infected. My whole body was shaking. Then, from the corner of my eye, a shadow moved past the window. My stomach dropped. Someone was out there, watching, waiting, and they weren't alone. I ran to my bedroom and locked the door. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling, and texted my best friend, Lauren. Someone is outside. I think they've been following me all week. Lauren, call the cops. Right now. I tried, but just like before, the call wouldn't go through. Like my phone wasn't working. Like someone had cut me off. Then, a new text. Unknown number. Why did you lock the door? Tears burned in my eyes. I didn't respond. Didn't move. I just waited. Minutes passed. Then, finally, my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. It's okay. I found another way in. I barely had time to register the message before. A soft creak sounded from the closet behind me. My entire body went cold. I turned around. The closet door was slightly ajar. And inside, something moved. The closet door creaked open another inch. I held my breath. My body refused to move, frozen in place, every nerve screaming at me to run. But I couldn't, because I knew, if I moved, whoever was inside would move too. A soft shuffle came from the darkness beyond the door. Something, or someone, was in there, watching me, waiting. And then, from the shadows, I heard a voice. Soft, loving. I knew you'd stay home for me. I finally found my voice. Who are you? I whispered. No answer. The closet door creaked again, opening wider. The space inside was dark, too dark, like the shadows had swallowed whoever was in there, like they were bleeding out into my room. I took a slow, trembling step back, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then, a hand slid out from the darkness, pale fingers, too long, dragging slowly across the wooden floor. Then the voice came again. Don't be scared, love. This is our night. I ran. I didn't think, didn't breathe. I just tore through the apartment, flinging open my bedroom door so hard it slammed against the wall. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Fast. Too fast. Something was chasing me. I reached the front door, my hands fumbling with the lock, my vision blurred with panic. Come on, come on. The doorknob twisted from the other side, like someone was already there, already waiting for me. I let out a shaky scream and stumbled back just as the door swung open. For a split second, I thought, this is it. But standing on the other side was Lauren. Her eyes widened in shock as she took in my face. What the hell is going on? You're not answering my calls. I nearly collapsed. Someone's in my apartment, I gasped. They were in the closet. They're still here. Lauren didn't hesitate. She grabbed my wrist and dragged me outside. We ran. Didn't stop. Didn't look back. We sprinted across the parking lot to her car, and the second we got inside, she locked the doors. I was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. Did you see him? Lauren's hands clenched the wheel. See who? The man in my apartment. I cried. The one who's been following me. She looked at me like I was losing my mind. Your apartment was empty. I stared at her, my blood turning to ice. No, that wasn't possible. He had been there. I had heard him, seen him. I opened my mouth, but Lauren shook her head. I checked every room before I came looking for you. No one was there. The closet was open, but it was empty too. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come, because if she was telling the truth, then where did he go? Lauren took me back to her place. I stayed awake the whole night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for another text, another knock, another sign that he had found me again. But nothing came. For the first time in days, there was silence. I didn't go back to my apartment. Lauren and I packed my things the next day, and I moved in with her for a while. I told the landlord I was breaking my lease. He didn't argue. It was like he already knew, like he had heard this story before. For a while, things were normal again. No texts, no flowers, no signs of him. I started sleeping through the night again. I even started to believe it was over. But deep down, I knew. You can't escape someone like that. You can't outrun obsession. And on Valentine's Day this year, I found out I was right. A package arrived at Lauren's house. Small, wrapped in red paper. My stomach twisted as I turned it over. No return address. No sender. Just my name. Lauren begged me not to open it, but I had to. Inside was a Polaroid photo. A picture of me, taken from outside Lauren's bedroom window, and written on the back, "Did you really think I'd let you go?"